Good morning, good morning, good morning. Let's get situated here. All right, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Perfect, okay. Let me get this up here. What was that verse again?
Oh, the verse?
Yeah.
Matthew 13 and verses, you caught me off guard here. Verses 10 through 16, probably. Yeah, 10 through 16. His disciples asked Jesus why he speaks in parables.
Mm-hmm.
So
cool. Okay. Yeah, we can work with that. Good morning, Cruz. Good morning, Lucas.
Lucas Macy.
All right.
Morning, guys.
Good morning. So, per the title, this is a little bit different. We're not really talking about politics. We're not really talking about global affairs at the moment. But we are talking about something that a lot of people don't know about, but this is actually the 25th anniversary of Lord of the Rings, a wonderful trilogy that had other films later on that came from the mind of J.R.R. Tolkien. I've read the books. I can't assume other people have, but it's a story that has stood the test of time. And it's one of those stories that quite arguably is a masterpiece. It's very hard to find things that are even equivalent to what Tolkien created. But the reason why I'm talking about it today is not only are we going to just celebrate the fact that Lord of the Rings still remains as one of the few undefeated masterpieces of our time, but also the Christian element to it. Yes, J.R.R. Tolkien was a man of faith. He was Catholic. But there are many parts in the story of Lord of the Rings that came directly from his faith. Moreover, I'm not sure if people know this, but another legendary author, C.S. Lewis, became a Christian because of Tolkien. And then one step further, you can go online, read articles, watch videos of deep analysis of Lord of the Rings, and how you can look at it from like a film perspective or a writing perspective. But what's interesting is one argument I heard, well, not argument, well, one analysis I heard was how trauma typically leads to great writers. I'm not sure if everyone knows, but Tolkien fought in World War One. And so he pulled a lot of his trauma from that into his storytelling. So before we get into it, I just want to show a quick little, like 1 minute video just to set the scene. And if everyone wants to go out and see him, the 25th anniversary of Lord of the Rings, the extended editions are being shown in select theaters. You can go get your tickets on fathomevents.com. Find your local theater. And the way it's going to work is they're showing Fellowship of the Ring tonight, The Two Towers tomorrow night, and then Return of the King the next night. So it's not back to back. That's like a 12, 13-hour marathon.
People would do it. There are people that would do it.
So it's just 4 hours at a time. That's it. But yeah, let me just show this quick little video just to set the mood, and we'll get into it. Let me increase the volume here really quick. Let's go.
I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened.
So do all who live to see such times, but that is not for them to decide. All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you.
It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really mattered. full of darkness and danger they were. Hope in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. Because they were holding on to something. There's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo. And it's worth fighting for.
In 2001, Fellowship of the Ring came out, if I remember correctly. Obviously, it was long after the books. And before that, there were other attempts to make them into movies. I think there was like an animated movie in the 70s made for it.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah. But before we dive into this, Joel, like when Lord of the Rings came out into theaters, what stood out to you? If you remember that, like what about that story in particular really made it such, well, a masterpiece?
There's so much to it. I'm actually, true confessions, I was more of a fan of The Hobbit.
Oh,
than I was
right,
Lord of the Rings.
right.
I thought the Lord of the Rings was just this big, grand scale story, which I always assumed was, and a lot of people think it was an allegory of World War II.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if you look at it, it is a very good allegory to World War II, to how it played out.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is he started writing it before World War II even started.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I mean, you could say that, Gondor and the Ents and all the people that were waiting out, the battle, didn't want to get involved in it. Could be the United States or the Soviet Union or whatever. And the Hobbits are just a perfect representation of the English people.
Right.
They live in their nice little shire, and they've got these nice little habits, and they just don't
Right.
do adventures, and they just,
Right.
is it going to interfere with second breakfast, or
What about afternoon tea?
yeah. So that's, I think the Hobbit was always, to me, a little more personal story, and it had more charm.
Right.
But the Lord of the Rings it's just this, how he thought of all this and how he kept track of everything. I can't keep track of everything in the Lord of the Rings. True confessions.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many caves of Eorbegan or the cliffs of Jordanstag or whatever, they're just all over, and I can't, Durin's Bane and whatever.
Right.
So to me, I'm not as big of a fan of that as, but the book did capture me, and I read all three, of them. And it is just the thing in the movie that I like the most. And I still remember is Aragorn's speech to everyone on the eve of battle, men of the West,
Oh yeah.
There may come a day when the courage of men may fail, but not today. It's not today. Today we fight. So, and even says men of the West.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's our time. What has happened to men of the West? We've become, we're ineffective, put it that way.
You can easily find retrospective analysis of Lord of the Rings, not just the books, not just the films, but also into different themes like masculinity, good, evil, grace, redemption. There's so many these different arcs. But going back to what you said, you identified more with The Hobbit. That was what made Tolkien so different. Was that in that time, fantasy stories were some form of escapism, where it transported you to a weird world for a little bit, but then it brought you back to reality. Whereas Tolkien was like, no, I'm going to make a world. I'm going to build a world, piece by piece, language by language. He used his background, his education, to craft Elvish, Dwarven, obviously human languages, but there's also a geography, there's lore, there's so much deep things. Like you were saying, The Hobbit was his first, I guess, attempt to show the world, hey, here's something new. Here's something new y'all haven't seen before. It's about a hobbit, a simple, small, unassuming character that goes out on this grand adventure, right?
Right.
Fast forward, there isn't just The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings trilogy. There's the Similarian, whatever it's called. There's a ton of other books that he wrote that builds the lore of this world that he created.
Right.
But at the end of the day, here we are in 2025. Why does Lord of the Rings remain as strong as it is? What is it about Lord of the Rings, just The Hobbit, all of it, that has still managed to capture our imagination, still manages to stand the test of time? And if we can talk about the books, even talking about the films. There's so many elements to this big story that I figured today we could focus on just the broad story overall, why it still is relevant, and how this franchise has still remained as one of the few that have not been completely dismantled by the woke. It has not become this garbage mess,
Right.
like sadly Star Wars has become.
Yeah.
The only
And you
thing
think about, I'm sorry, there's two other modern comparisons as far as someone who's created a reality and with languages, and that would be Star Wars and Star Trek.
right.
Yeah. And I mean, I used to teach, I taught up in Washington, and I had some students that when the new Star Trek movie came out, this one guy and his girlfriend saw it 21 times in one weekend. He knew someone who worked at the theater, and they just kept letting him in the back door.
Mm.
His goal was to see it 100 times and memorize the whole movie. And he, on his book covers, this back days when they still covered their books with, shopping bags, and he had Klingon. He knew Klingon.
Mm-hmm.
And he had Klingon written, and he just knew everything there was to know about Star Trek.
Mm.
And that's the same with Star Wars. But I don't know. Like I said, there seems to be more of a Christian underpinning. George Lucas was just a filmmaker that created this thing, and it just kind of got away from him, right? And Star Trek was Gene Roddenberry, he was just a kind of a new agey thinker, right? But there was, even in the original Star Trek, there was an allegory to Horatio Hornblower, of kind of like the British Empire.
Right.
The Enterprise was allegorical to a ship of the British Empire, and the captain of that ship represented Britain, right? That he was Britain, But there didn't seem to be the Christian foundation between those two. They were kind of, good tries, but there was not the depth. The foundation of those two was not as strong as Lord of the Rings, which was written by a very strong Christian guy who was brought up in a very strong Christian environment. That's back in the days when Oxford and Cambridge and all those universities still embraced their Christian identity. England, Britain was still, basically faithful to its beginnings as, a Christian country, which was a monarchy, which was spreading light to the ends of the earth, really.
Right.
So
when it comes to making this connection, the overall point of today's video, just so everyone listening and watching can take away, is that we as Christians have all been given gifts from God. We have been given talents from God, things that we are naturally good at. Once you learn what those are, use them. Use them to glorify God. Use them to glorify what He has done for you, the world that He's created. And if people in the world who may not aren't Christians can still appreciate it even better. And my takeaway from this is Tolkien created a world that people from all walks of life have appreciated. And I would argue he used his God-given gift of storytelling to do that. But really quick, I want to show another video clip here. This is geared more towards the film side of it, but he makes a really good point as to where we're at today and why Lord of the Rings remains a masterpiece. Here we go. It's just here.
I think we can all agree that popular, high-budget, blockbuster cinema has, for a while now, been on a downwards trajectory. Despite all the staggering budgets and huge stars, despite all the different ways we can watch this stuff nowadays, something very fundamental seems to have gone missing. You know of what I speak. The heart, the soul, the passion. These elements that have defined epic storytelling from the Odyssey and Beowulf to Seven Samurai and Bridge on the River Kwai. Well, they're becoming harder and harder to find in the realm of cinema, lost in an ever-deepening sea of formulaic plots, rushed CGI, low-contrast, murky compositions, shot-to-reverse shots on dull green screen backgrounds, drowning in intertextuality and references and cameos and quips and laziness. Nothing can be sincere anymore, nothing can be simply played straight. TV is now cinema, cinema is now TV. Art? That's now content. Hey, that piece of content did pretty well. Let's make a sequel, and 3 spin-offs. You know what? Just make it a cinematic universe. Sure, independent art house cinema is still great. In fact, it's probably better than it's ever been. I feel like most year-end best films of the year lists these days are consistently carried by companies such as A24, alongside the small select group of reliable auteurs who are actually given enough creative freedom to make something original and interesting. But sometimes I just want to watch a well-made blockbuster which respects itself, which respects its audience, which is actually trying really, really hard. On a completely unrelated note, I just got done watching the entire 4K remastered extended editions of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy in the cinema. I'm still not exactly sure why cinemas across the world decided to screen the Lord of the Rings extended editions back to back to back. I can't remember that ever happening before, but I'm not complaining. These are some of my favorite films of all time, and I of course slept at the opportunity to watch what I consider to be the definitive versions of these 3 masterpieces in the theater. And yes, the experience was incredible, obviously. However, sitting in the same cinema where I usually watch contemporary movies really got me comparing Lord of the Rings to every other epic blockbuster that comes out today. And I emerged from the cinema after finishing Return of the King with a few main questions. How on earth did they pull that off? And what the hell happened? How did we go from my brother, my captain, my king to somehow Palpatine returned? Well, I have a few ideas.
So he goes in this big dive into it, but this segues beautifully into a guy who is not perfect, by the way, a guy who has his flaws, Peter Jackson. This guy who had this crazy idea to put Tolkien's work to film, a monumental task that no one's done before, aside from, say, the directors who adapted J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter to screen, or the guys who tried making C.S. Lewis's work that kind of fizzled out. But for some reason, Peter Jackson was able to do it. And so, going back to the verse you found, let's see here. Here we go. So, Joel, you found this wonderful verse about parables. And the disciples were asking Jesus Christ why he spoke in parables. And the connection here is when you're creating a story, or if you're adapting a story to screen, you're basically telling a parable. You're telling a story that has a purpose, it has a meaning. And to sum this all up, I would say that's how it stood the test of time, is because this story has a deeper meaning to whoever watches it. And as a Christian, we all can take different things from this story. But to bring it all back to what truly matters, Joel, you can read this, or you can provide a summary of what Matthew 13, 10 through 16 says, however you want to do it.
Okay, well, I'll just read it. And the disciples came up and said to him, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" And Jesus answered them, "To you it has been granted to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been granted. For whoever has, to him more shall be given, and he will have an abundance. But whoever does not have, even what he has shall be taken away from him. Therefore I speak to them in parables, because while seeing they do not see, and while hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand." And in their case, the prophecy of Isaiah is being fulfilled, which says, "You shall keep on listening, but shall not understand. You shall keep on looking, but shall not perceive. For the heart of this people has become dull. With their ears they scarcely hear, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their heart, and return, and I would heal them. But blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear."
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, in your words, Joel, like, what can we take away from this?
It kind of goes back to what I was saying before, and when I was reading the verses, kind of impressed on me that broad is the way that leads to destruction, and very narrow is the way that leads to life. The Bible makes it very clear not everyone is going to understand or is going to follow the way.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is the Calvinist in me, but God picks who God picks, and God reveals himself to those he chooses to reveal to himself. And I don't understand it, but it's like this. We're talking about this great Christian-based allegory series called Lord of the Rings, which was, if you have eyes to see, you can see the Christian influence of it.
Right.
But if you don't, it's just a cool movie, and you get into all the language and stuff, but you totally miss what the author is trying to say.
Right.
So I think that's what he's saying. There's, the truth is in humans like stories. We live out stories. Our life is a story. This whole story of God, we're part of the God's story that he's telling about to the world about himself. Everything God does is for his glory, is to tell people this is my way. This is my story, and I've chosen to make you a part of it. Matter of fact, I've chosen to tell my story through you. But to those who can't see, to those who are walking in the wide road to destruction, they just, hearing they don't understand, and seeing they don't perceive. It's just kind of the way it is.
I think, to sum up, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, everything, the entire world that Tolkien created, for me personally, the short line that really sums it all up for my Christian connection is, there's this moment in The Two Towers where Frodo is basically given up. And Sam makes it very clear. He's like, Frodo's like, "What do we have to hold on to, Sam?" Like what are we using to keep going? And Sam says that there is some good in this world, Mr. Frodo. And it's worth fighting for. That Christian connection for me, what really stuck with me is you make that fight in the name of Jesus Christ. There is good in this world. It's worth fighting for in the name of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. And, you know, sorry, go ahead.
Look, go.
Oh, I saw some analysis. Frank Turek actually was saying this, and he claimed that Tolkien himself said that the real hero of the books is not Frodo, it's not Aragorn, it's Sam. Sam is the one, and you would never thought of that. But so
there's this really good video I saw a long time ago, but it analyzed the selfless masculinity of Samwise Gamgee.
Oh, okay.
And it's really well done. Again, you can easily lose yourself into so many analysis.
Right.
But to sum up today's video, I know it's kind of different, will come from left field, but for me personally, I can't tell you how many times, you know, I struggle, or there are days, weeks, months where I'm just, you know, battling with depression, whatever. And of course, the source of that peace is Scripture. And of course, I lean onto Christ to get me through that. There's one extra thing on top of that, and it's the ability to sit down and watch a story that reminds you, hey, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to get through it. And for me, it's Lord of the Rings. Like, I love Star Wars. Star Wars has been my life, my childhood. But even with Star Wars, it's like I can watch Star Wars and enjoy it. But I don't get that same deep.
Yeah. There's not that foundation, that true foundation. It's it's a new agey kind of worldly foundation for it. And that's honestly why both those franchises, I think, fell into wokeness and are unrecognizable now, because they didn't have a true foundation. There wasn't that foundation of truth that was either obvious or intrinsically known to the creators of it. I don't know Peter Jackson's faith. But.
Well, of course. And even with Harry Potter, my wife's a huge Harry Potter fan, and I love Harry Potter too. It's a wonderful series of stories by an amazing author. Even with Harry Potter, you know, I still don't have that deep connection. Now, to be fair, Amazon has tried making their spin on Lord of the Rings. It's like a prequel called Rings of Power. That is hot garbage. This is bad writing, and that's like a little hint of that, but nowhere near as much of collapse as with, you know, other franchises.
And before we go, you had mentioned when we were talking about this segment that Tolkien's influence on C.S. Lewis.
Right.
And if you want to see a really good movie that my wife and I found a few weeks back, it's called A Most Reluctant Convert. And it's about C.S. Lewis's conversion to Christianity at Oxford through J.R.R. Tolkien.
Interesting.
And it's done in a narrative style. A guy plays the older C.S. Lewis telling the story, and then they go back and dramatize it. And it's so well done. But I told my wife, you can't do a bad C.S. Lewis.
Right.
If you just stick to C.S. Lewis's writing, you cannot go wrong.
Right.
And it's basically, it's just him narrating the story and scenes of him in this writers group and discussion group with Tolkien, and how Tolkien through Tolkien, God opens C.S. Lewis's eyes to the, you know, he was an atheist and he was a hedonist or whatever. And slowly his eyes are open to the reality of the absolute truth of God and of Jesus Christ. It's just, you can't stop watching it. It's just so well done.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But it's right at this time, or right before this time. This is laying the foundations of the work that they both did. So
that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and sign off, guys. Again, thank you so much for everyone joining us today. God is in charge. Have a wonderful weekend. See y'all next week.
See you next week, guys.
Bye.
Bye.